Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. I'm your regular host, Greg Carr, and we are gathered today, as we are every week, to discuss issues of particular concern to African people and to others fighting to build a better society. We gather here at the Black Table across a range of topics and issues and a range of guests. And as we know, regular viewers will know, and new viewers will learn, we entertain every topic that we can think of. We have all our regular convenings. But one of the things that we take particular responsibility for engendering and convening is conversations with our elders. And we've seen a range of them across our first year as we enter our second year. And this Black Table, we are really honored to have one of our most important and influential elders in our African global community, Richard Moriba Kelsey, Dr. Kelsey, Baba Moriba. He is an author, he is an educator, he is an institution builder, a transformer. He has worked professionally as a psychologist, as a clinical counselor, and has had so many other roles in life. One of his roles is as an author. We're gathered today on the occasion of the recent publication of his latest book, Strengthening African-Centered Organizations, 11 Keys. And he'll be talking to us today about a range of topics, including some of the things that are particular concern to him as he enters his 98th year. That's right. Don't get it twisted. We are happy to have joining us here at the Black Table today, Dr. Richard Moriba Kelsey, Baba Moriba. Welcome, Baba Moriba. Hotep.
Hotep to you, and it's a joy to be with you, because I consider you to be one of the young visionaries that is helping us do the things that we need to do anyway.
Well, Baba, listen, it's an honor to have been and to continue to be your student. And for those of you who don't know, when we get into talking about these institutions that you've built, including the African Center for Study and Worship in Columbus, Ohio, and the Afrocentric Personal Development Shop, those of you watching the Black Table, this is the brother that recruited us into this work most directly. As Dizzy Gillespie said of Louis Armstrong, Baba Moriba, know him, know me, know you, know me, Baba. So I want everybody to know that. And we've had a number of people, Toya Falola and Abdullah Kalamat, so many people at the Black Table. And having you here really does allow us to enter 2023 with a different perspective, a different framework. And I'm wondering if we could start by perhaps having you help us think about some of the things that are on your mind as we enter 2023. What are some of your concerns, and what are some of the things that we really need to hear as it relates to strengthening our institutions and strengthening ourselves?
Well, if it's all right, I'd like to tell you how I got to where I am right now.
Perfect. Please.
And I'm gonna go through a series of publications that are steps along the way for me getting to the issue of the really solidifying African institutions rather than just building them and leaving them.
Yes, sir.
So first, back in about 1990 or thereabout, I wrote a book. I don't know if you've seen it, called Being Healthy and Wealthy.
Oh yes, absolutely.
Well, that book was my beginning, the one to put things down. Now in it, I talked about ages and stages of growing, in which I discussed the role of the elder, the role of the nation builder, the role of the warrior, and the role of the pre-warrior, suggesting that it was so important for us to be clear about the responsibilities and stages at each of those levels. And it seemed to me at that time, and now, that we have not done a good job of helping our brothers and young brothers and sisters and old brothers and sisters assume those responsibilities. To give you a good example, just last week there was a young man who came to a meeting that I was in, and he was probably from the street, but I had talked to him before, and he came and said that he didn't think the group would listen to young people. That's why they were out there. Now I wonder if that's so, If that's so, that's crying. That's crying in the wilderness, and it's so important for us to respond to that. So this book, I thought back then would have helped in resolving the issue that he brought to us. Then later I wrote, So You Want Liberation.
Yes, yes.
And in this book I discussed the issue of how you go through, how I went through a conversion from being a Negro to a maybe an imperfect African, but at least getting close to being an African.
Yes, and by African you mean a person of African descent who has a certain consciousness, huh? So right. in on the continent, you know, it's interesting because I know you're going to talk about in a minute this 3-volume work that you did, grounded in the community you were born and raised in, the Pittsburgh, A Sense of Community series of interviews and discussions. As you're talking, I'm thinking about how you talked about intergenerational wisdom and how it has to be passed on, because even as the young brother approached you all, and I suspect, was this a young brother who happened to be in the Pittsburgh community that you?
No, he was born and reared there in the Pittsburgh community.
Okay, well, the reason I ask you that, Bob, is because in that 3-volume work on Pittsburgh that you've done, you kind of help outline through interviews and discussion with elders and community members the fact that we had some of these communities. And you talk about how it's important, particularly for our young people, for all of us, to remember that we're not starting from scratch. I mean, so I didn't want to interrupt you, but I just wanted to ask you about that in terms of your foundations and upbringing and how that plays into these values that you are certainly imploring us to revisit, but certainly saying that we're not starting from scratch when we do.
I'm glad you stopped me on that point, because maybe I wouldn't have made it clear. But certainly, we had communities that did the job, and sometimes we allow others to describe those communities for us, and they never put the fact that they were healthy communities. They almost never. They always portray them as being something that's 3/5. You know, go back to that 3/5, referring to us and now as a community incompletely human. So I went to Pittsburgh, came back to Pittsburgh in 2010.
Oh, and we should remind, because we got a global audience, as we know, that Pittsburgh community is a community in Atlanta, Georgia. You're a Georgian by birth. I just want to make that, because people may be thinking we talking about Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I know you'll make the point, but I wanted to make sure we got that in.
Yeah, well, that's about a 9/10 square mile.
Wow.
In Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh is, and so it's not a huge geographic area, but what was unique about it is that it was 99.9% Black. There were to my knowledge, there was only 2 blocks, well, 3 blocks, where there were any white people at all. And yet, everybody felt protected. Everybody felt like they could have some kind of hustle that you might call a job, almost no unemployment. Even if it was just going to the store for people to bring back their groceries. And there was doctors, there was cab stand, there was beauty parlors. In fact, the beauty parlors and the barbershops are really the what I call them communication centers, where people really talked about the issues that were going on in the community. Now, they may not talk about them as eloquently as we have learned to talk, but their talk was direct and meaningful. So when I came back to Atlanta, I decided that it was important to put that down, and I didn't want to put it down just myself. I could have written something, but I believe that it's very necessary to let people tell their own story. And so that's what I proceeded on. And so I wrote 3 little volumes that I want to talk about the content. But I should tell you the first one, which was about the Pittsburgh neighborhood, had to do with individual interviews, where I got people who had been in Pittsburgh at least 20 to 50 years to talk about Pittsburgh. The outcome of that was that I learned that, well, I knew, but they brought it to my attention that the church, that were churches that had influence in the lives of Pittsburgh. Now, the churches were not just like we think about them today, Holy Ghost and so forth. The churches were, in many cases, were community centers. In fact, the church that I went to had a preschool and had a kindergarten. It had boys' clubs and it had girls' clubs and all those things within that church.
And you're talking about the 1930s when you were raised, because you were born.
That's right. So I'm just saying that, but I didn't see any place where people were putting those types of things down so that we could even look back and decide how we can become healthy again. Sometimes we talk about becoming healthy as it relates to other people. Well, I want to respect other people. That's fine. Respect them. But don't say that that's what we are. Let's declare what we are for ourselves. So I went back and I decided that I'd do for churches. I said, let's do a book on churches in Pittsburgh. Quite to my surprise, when I started to do this, somebody said that there are 51 churches. Now I remember I'm talking about a 9/10 square mile or something like that.
Less than 1 square mile. How many, Bob?
They told me. I'm telling you, the community now.
Yeah.
I'm aware of the fact that some of them might have been house churches, might have been, first one thing and then the other. But when I got down to it, I could only find about I think it was 30 to 40. So I interviewed about 17 of those, and to tell the story, to tell their stories, and I recorded those stories. Then lest people think that the family wasn't intact, I decided to interview families, and I don't remember now how many. Now, let me just take a look. I don't remember how many families, but let's just say I interviewed about 20 families to tell the story of how they were reared and what the issues were in Pittsburgh. And one of the outstanding things that came up over and over again was that there was a railroad track that had been accepted by the people as border. It wasn't the real border, but it was a border from the standpoint of the people. And even the dating, if you came across that line and you weren't straight, then they might send you back.
That community took care of its own. You had to have the right care.
There were rules and regulations that would. I'll give you another example. My mother was walking on a street. I'll name the street McDaniel Street, and there were some guys who were shooting dice. And they were down and as the dice game go. And as she approached them, they all stood up. Hi, Miss Kelsey. Hi, Miss Kelsey. And by the time she took 10, 20 steps, they backed down on their knees. But the fact that what I'm trying to point out is there was that intergenerational respect, regardless of what you were doing.
Absolutely.
And,
But we're going to.
I could tell many stories. I won't do that right now.
No. But that's important, Bob, because we're going to close out the first section and then we're going to come back in a moment. But you're giving us not only a history of Pittsburgh, a glimpse of it, you're also giving a blueprint for everyone here listening. This is how we recover our memory. We need to interview our elders in our community and deal with our institutions and then set it down for the current and previous generations. We're going to come back in a moment with you, Bob and Moriba, and we're going to continue this conversation here at the Black Table as we explore the Seba'it, the Egyptians would call it, the values and lessons we're learning today from our guest, Dr. Richard Moriba Kelsey. Back in a moment here at the Black Table.
Black Star Network is here.
Oh, no punch!
I'm real revolutionary right now.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black
own media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. I'm your regular host, Greg Carr, joined today by Dr. Richard Moriba Kelsey. Baba Moriba. Baba, you were leading us through Pittsburgh and some of your upbringing and the values, the protocols, as Angie Porter, one of our regular guests at the Legal Roundtable, and another of your students might call it. You know, out of that upbringing, your mother, of course, you mentioned, an educator, your father, and a builder himself, you decided that you wanted to enter the trades. Is that right? Or somewhere around 11th grade? You end up leaving Pittsburgh. What happened there? And then you come back to Alabama and Tuskegee. Could you talk about that? I mean, after having served a stint as a veteran, how did you, this is World War II era, bro. That's kind of dangerous decisions you were making. Talk to us a little bit about the values and things you learned, lessons we can learn about that journey you had from late teen years into your 20s as you kind of circulated through and saw some of the things that this social structure we live in have, the obstacles and how you overcame them.
Well, I don't know about how I overcame them, but I can tell you some of them that happened and that I can share with anybody about so that they might be useful. Perhaps they, is, as we talk about, it's fit, which sometimes people refer to as a devil. That's incorrect, but let's just say some people refer to it that way. I'd like to put some of those obstacles as being is fit and which we should use to stimulate us to grow. So I'm going to say, and because you probably know that one of my issues is time out for talking about white supremacy and glorifying it.
Yes, sir.
By talking about it and then begin to talk about how we can become powerful again and build on that rather than continue the discourse, the major discourse across this country dealing with white supremacy and how bad that is. I say put it in the garbage can, to hell with it. And let's go talk about how we can become powerful again.
Yes, sir.
Now, I don't want to use language that's inappropriate, but
we're all right.
But I feel pretty strongly about that. So,
absolutely.
And I would say that in any audience that it's time out. And in fact, I get infuriated about that. So if I sound harsh, but I guess I am harsh about that because
absolutely.
I think that the time has come when we need to just come together in unity and and unity doesn't mean talking about it. Unity means to me that demonstrated by coming with common issues that we're going to address each year, like our ancestors did when they would come after the flood and talk about issues and go back and when the flood and build their follow through on that plan of action. We should do the same thing. We have examples, and so I would just say we should use those examples. So having said that, let me tell. I left high school in 11th grade. I ran track and I was the athlete and all that stuff. Because I don't know exactly why I left, but the World War II had begun about a year or so earlier than it began, I think, in 1941. This was 43 I'm talking about when I left.
Do you mind, Baba, mentioning where you attended high school? Because it's important as people are listening to you to understand these Black institutions really did form you. They didn't have white supremacy at the center of their mind. They were too busy helping prepare the next generations. You're a Washington student, weren't you?
Washington. Remember, there's only one Black high school in Atlanta.
My goodness.
What that was Washington High School. That meant that
I'm sorry, Booker T. Washington High School in the shadow of the Atlanta University Center, right?
That's right.
Yes, sir.
And I think they did a good job.
Yes, sir.
Teaching for self.
Yes.
And so one of the things that occurred to me, I didn't like the idea of my parents having to struggle to pay for anything for me. So I began to wanted to purchase my own clothes and do all those things. So I found ways of doing that, ranging from delivering drugs from pharmaceuticals on a bicycle from drugstores to delivering food for grocery stores, pushing carts with coal and all those kind of things. But in the 11th grade, Roosevelt had this NYA, National Youth Administration, because they needed workers in because of the war. There was a shortage of workers in aircraft industries and building tanks and all that stuff. So I said, oh, wow, that looks like a good opportunity to get involved in the machine industry, that's drill press and lathe and ID grinders and stuff like that. So I went to, and I remember that I want to emphasize how important Black institutions are. Krogman School and Clark College at that time were close to each other, and right here in Pittsburgh. And so classes were held after school for preparing us for those types of industrial jobs. And so I went through the first phase of that. And the second phase was well, you went to either to Detroit or to Connecticut or to some other manufacturing center for war industry equipment. And so I went to the Connecticut Center, and I learned how to do lathe, drill presses, and less on ID grinders, but some. And so I had jobs in foundries and factories of various types. But I ended up in the aircraft in Pratt & Whitney. Pratt & Whitney. But at that time I was about 17, approaching 18, and I ended up going to the military. I really volunteered for Tuskegee Airmen. So since I was approaching 18, they said they didn't want to accept it at the time, so they drafted me, and I still maintain that's what I wanted to do. But it was interesting, and I'll stop there, and then if you want to raise questions.
Yes, sir.
What's interesting about that, I went to Fort Benning and made known what I wanted to do, and they said that they didn't tell me directly, but by implication they told me that the quota was full for Tuskegee, and they created a category that you can find no record of today, called pre-aviation cadet. And there were a number of us across in the military who were in that category. That the fire caught, there were fires that destroyed the evidence of that category. Let me stop for a minute.
Yes, sir. No. This is good. Well, we're gonna pause. We'll come back in our next block, but just want to mention, William Krogman, of course, who's on the faculty at Clark College for a number of years, a classicist, the Krogman School you went to, named for him. Mary McLeod Bethune, so influential in the NYA. Just thinking about how Black folk in strategic positions who can have us in mind, you never know how it's going to yield a Moriba Kelsey as you went through the space. But when we come back, maybe we can pick up with this because, as you say, with the Pre-Aviation Corps, Tyndall Field, as you were in Panama City, Florida, then going for everywhere from Utah and California to the Pacific Theater to Hawaii to the Philippines, and then dealing with Tuskegee and how that shaped you, educators there that shaped you, and before you ended up in Ohio, which is of course where your influence continues to resonate, not only from Ohio but really worldwide as a consequence of those years. Maybe when we come back after the break, we can pick up with any of that and kind of open up into these continuing this conversation about values, about community and health, and the things that kind of concern you and the things we can learn from these places that you experienced. So let's come back after the break and continue with you, Baba. We'll be back with Dr. Richard Moriba Kelsey, who is really helping us understand as we sit at the Black table what we are talking about. We're talking about values and Re-Africanization and really establishing and reestablishing ourselves as a healthy community. Back in a moment here at the Black Table.
Let's go. Truth Talks is the fastest growing show about pop culture, and now we're exclusively on our own channel.
Go ahead, say it, man.
Attention! We're back.
We gotta stop letting this slide.
Bigger and stronger than ever.
I mean, I just have questions.
Season 2 is reloading May 26th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time
What's up?
with new hosts
Let me tell you what damn time it is.
and big celebrity surprises.
Kiss my behind. It's Oprah Winfrey.
Subscribe today at Truth Talks Live,
Give black people what they need, and we'll show them for you.
and don't miss out on all the upcoming viral moments.
Simulcasting weeknights at 8 p.m. on Roland Martin Unfiltered and Black Star Network and Truth Talks Live.
I'll see you there.
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. Remember to support the Black Star Network. You can join the Bring the Funk fan club. We definitely need you to do that. We've pushed past a great number at the end of 2022, and we want you to subscribe. Remember, if we have just a few of everybody who watches this to subscribe, we'll continue to support this network in ways that allow us to grow. Watch all the shows across the network. Download the Black Star app. And remember, this is your media, and we have to support it. So we're back here with Dr. Richard Moriba Kelsey. Barbara, when we left, you kind of grounded us in your beginning of your experience with the military. And as you cycled through that, you ended up at Tuskegee as a student. I think you did an internship at the Atlanta World as an intern, helping them with some of the skills you developed in the military. But ultimately, you may have stayed at the World or going into that as your career, except for the influence of, I think it was 2 educators at Tuskegee. Could you tell us a little bit about, the value of elders and juniors helping, kind of guide us as we move through our journey, and how your years at Tuskegee maybe helped you along that path?
Well, I can tell you that, and I don't mind calling their names, Dr. Fuller and Dr. Reed were tremendous men in terms of influencing students. They took the time out after class to talk to you about issues, and I think that they watched each student to learn something about each student, because they came to me. I intended to go to Tuskegee 2 years only. They had a 2-year program, and I was going to come out and become become a printer in the newspaper industry. At the end of the first year, Dr. Reed came to me and said, "Boy, you need to stay here. You need to stay here for 4 years." I told him I don't want to do that. And then he reinforced himself with Dr. Reed, and the 2 of them, Reed and Fuller, then ganged up. I say, and they said to me, "We want you to stay here." And I said, "Well, I'll be behind." They said, "Well, you come to summer school and we'll catch you up." And that was the beginning of my even considering 4-year college. And now, fast forward, I went through successfully and remained pretty good with good grades. And at the end of the 3rd year, there came an opportunity in the post office. At that time, it was called Railway Mail. And so I took the test and I passed it, and they called me. Now I really didn't. I didn't have any idea it was going to call so quickly. I thought that I'd have to wait, and by the time I graduated, I'd have a job. So I went to Dr. Reed, and I told him that what had happened, and he said to me, he said, "Boy, take the job and then come back." And that's what I did. Well, and coming back though, I had been active in some demonstration that occurred in Alabama, some demonstrations that occurred in Alabama prior to the Civil Rights Movement that's never talked about.
And by the way, Bob, I just want to interject here. This pairs very well. You were literally there in the era that our friend and brother Brian Jones at the New York Public Library writes about in his book, The Tuskegee Student Uprising, where he traces from the death of Booker T. Washington all the way through to the 70s and 80s. But he writes about the 40s, and you were literally there. Frederick Patterson was the president at the time. The founder, one of the founders of the United Negro College Fund. But I just wanted to interject that because in the Black Table, those you go back and look at that interview we did with Brian Jones, he's going to fill in some of the background of what you're talking about now. So you're coming back to Tuskegee to finish this degree. So what happens then, Robert?
Well, the dean, it wasn't the president. The dean of my college would not accept me because he said that I'd created disturbances. And so I think I could afford it. But I decided not to. And I went on because I had a good job, Railway Mill at that time was a good paying job and a respectable job. Well, in the meantime, I took correspondence courses off and on, and ended up going to Kent State University and Ohio State after I went to Ohio. And that's how I happened to go through the graduate programs. But I always trace back my stimulation to do that to Dr. Reed and Dr. Fuller because they literally took me by the hand and guided me through it.
It's critical. That's critical. And in the lessons we learned in here about intergenerational work, you're writing about that constantly in your books. How if we're going to develop youth, you've got to include the elders and have conversation and have be open to that. I want to ask you about how those lessons that you learned at home in the Pittsburgh community of Atlanta, at Tuskegee, with these two particular educators, how as you went to Ohio and then are working, I think it was in Cleveland first, how you then applied those lessons in your work as an educator, as a clinical counselor and psychologist. Correct me if I'm wrong, you introduced elementary school level counseling, I think in Cleveland, and then was it the state of Ohio recruited you to Columbus to do that for the state, making it maybe only the second state in the country that actually, why was it important to have counseling at the elementary school level? I'm sure you had Black children in mind in particular.
Yeah, I did. In fact, that's where I was working in the health community when I left. It became, I reflect on my own background.
Yes, sir.
All along the way, Gideon, there was, I don't remember his name, a guy in the NYA program. Then there was men at Kent State, one of the men at Kent State, all who influenced me. Now, it's funny because I couldn't articulate that for a long time about how that generation helped paid off for me. I believe that it'll pay off for anybody, but I can tell you that it helped me know that it was necessary to try to pass that information on, and that's what I did. As I began to look at the African Center, the development. Now, let me just start by telling us a little bit about the African Center, because I think that's one of the payoffs. If I had to say what I gave back to the community, that's one of the payoffs that really wasn't my giving, but I can trace it back to my father, my Dr. Reed and Dr. Fuller, and other men who helped me, men and women, I should say, who helped me. In fact, a lady in Cleveland gave me, I think it was $150 to go to aid me in going to Kent State. I mean, all these little things, they may not seem so important, but we have to get back to them. Whereas the lady didn't know me, but she knew what I was trying to do, and yes, and that $150 paid was enough to stimulate me to stick with going to Kent State. Now, I'm giving all these examples. I know that the articulate theoreticians might take that apart, but I say let's be plain and common and look back and build on what we know were the systems that we had that worked for us.
Yes.
And so as we do this, I'm going to bring it on up now in terms of, I found that one thing that was missing in our community that we had been taught otherwise. As I look back on our history, and I'm thankful to you and others who helped me do this, we saw that there was evidence in the Kemetic and Egyptian and even later of times when there were certain principles that we had allowed to be institutionalized and given and spoon-fed us in an incorrect way often. And I said, well, let's read.
I think we may have had a bit of a link there. Pause. There's a gap in it. And as Baba Moriba, we get the signal back. He'll be back in a second, I'm sure. We just want to emphasize here at the table, and I can fill in some of the things by way of his life journey. Not only was he successful in establishing elementary school counseling in Cleveland and then in other places in the state of Ohio, when he moved to Columbus, that's when he met his wife, Mama Niambi, Moriba Kelsey, and together, who herself an educator in the Columbus Public Schools, and they began to establish institutions there while they continued to work in the schools. Dr. Kelsey joined the faculty of Ohio State University, where he taught counseling and evaluation for nearly 20 years. But he continued to do community work. You heard him mention the African Center for Study and Worship, which was established in East Columbus. And that is and was a study group, no longer exists, but it really was an incubator for community organizations. And that is the formation actually that he recruited students from the Columbus area, including students from Ohio State University. And that would include a young, at the time, law student named Greg Carr, who began to attend the African Center. And that's where I was introduced to a level of community organizing and formation and study that was significant, unique, and linked to organizations around the United States and the world. From that, they also developed what's something called the Afrocentric Personal Development Shop that helps with people who are fighting a range of addictions between drugs, alcohol, so many other things. And that institutional formation continues to exist in Columbus, employs a number of people, continues to do the influence. Dr. Kelsey also was a member and continuing member of the Association of Black Psychologists and the Association for the Study of Classical African Civilizations. So many of the folk that we have interviewed and discussed and will continue to discuss here at the table come out of that formation. Dr. Kelsey, I think that we resolved the tech issues. Bob, I think I was just helping people understand some of the organizations and institutions you have created. And in fact, if we
I said something about one.
No, jump on in. No, please. Yeah, we wanted to make sure we had.
The African Center for Study and Worship.
Yes, sir.
Does still exist, but it exists under the Taiwi Family Village name.
Of course. Taiwi. Yes, sir. Taiwi. Yeah. And by the way, you all, Taiwi, the two lands, that name comes from the ancient Egyptian. That we talk about Egypt or Kemet, but Taiwi was the name that they called themselves as well. The community. Yes, sir. Thank you, Baba. Thank you for that correction. Yeah. So maybe, in fact, maybe we should do it like this, Baba. We'll pause here and we come back in our final block for today, and we're going to have you back, obviously. I hope you don't mind if you might consider joining our regular rotation. Maybe we can have some conversations really about drill down into some of these values that you've been writing about and thinking about, particularly in strengthening African-centered organizations, these 11 keys that you lay out in terms of institutions. If you don't mind, maybe when we come back, you can help us think about some of those key values and how we can really revitalize them. If that's all right with you. Okay. Well, we'll come back then. We'll be back here at the Black Star Network in our final block for today with Baba Moriba Kelsey, discussing these essential elements and values for institution buildings and health in our communities. Back in a moment here at the Black Star Network.
Hello, I'm Isaac Hayes III, founder and CEO of Fanbase. Listen to what I'm about to tell you. The window to invest in Fanbase is closing. We've raised over $10.6 million of our $17 million goal. That means there's room for less than 6,370 people to invest in Fanbase for the average amount. The minimum to invest in Fanbase right now is $399. That makes you an owner in Fanbase today. Go to startengine.com/fanbase to invest. Why? Because current social apps have taken advantage of users for far too long, with content suppression, shadow banning, harmful racist content, and no real tools for monetization and equity. Fanbase has over 1.4 million users and counting, allowing anyone to reach all their following and monetize their content from day one. Social media is the new TV, and whoever owns the apps that distribute that content have the opportunity to own potential billion-dollar companies. While big platforms with uncertain futures are failing to serve their users, Fanbase is stepping up to fill the gap. Don't wait until it's too late. Invest now, invest for yourself and your future. Go to startengine.com/fanbase and own the next generation of social media.
Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. Remember to support our Black Star Network. Download the app, become a member of the Bring the Funk fan club. Watch all our shows. We're building here, building for eternity here at the Black Star Network. We're back with Baba Moriba Kelsey. Dr. Kelsey, Baba Moriba, we kind of put on the table some of the broad experiences and some of the institutions you've built and joined and influences. You know, this book, Strengthening African-Centered Organizations, 11 Keys, you identify these key elements: unity, health, divine, supernatural, action, vigor, commitment, relationships, fertility, economics, and intelligence. 11 keys, you say, to help strengthen our institutions, so many of which don't quite get out of the cradle without failing, and that can be corrected. Maybe we can spend this last section with you helping us understand what you think are some of the most important things we can draw upon and to strengthen our institutions and communities.
Well, first, let me just say, I think that influence has to come from those who have an idea that they understand, and they have to be willing to give, because when they give, they receive. That's one of the things that I think is important. They have to quit monetizing the giving of values and principles that are culturally laden. In fact of the matter is, I just had a conversation with a group yesterday where I was suggesting that we no longer can just seek aid for and give it to a community or to a group or to a church or a family. It is a misnomer to say that I got this for you, here, take it, rather than training the person how to get it for themselves. And now, in order to do that, one of the key elements, before you can even get to the idea of strengthening, because we are losing some of our strong institutions because of various one thing and another. But that one of the key issues is that we have to accept each other as geniuses. Now, you know that somebody said you're creating the word geniuses, but I don't care where I am or not. I said that everybody is a genius. Now, I wrote this little pledge some time ago. I know you read it.
I've said it many times, Bob. Myself, Relethea Watkins, Mario Beatty, so many of us who came through your apprenticeship. Please go right ahead.
No, that's all right. I just wanted to say that I made this little book. Now, this little book, The Genius Africans United, is to say that as long as I think that I'm better than you and I can stratify ourselves like that, yes, we don't learn how to use the talents that even what we would call the lowest one might be the highest one, because in order for the link to chain together to make it strong. And so African genius is saying that my uncle was a genius, my brother was a genius, my neighbor was a genius. I think we ought to drill that in ourselves and move ahead rather than believing that I got it. You know, I call that I-ism, but that's one of the things. Now, I recognize that whatever has happened, many of our organizations start and they last for 7, 8, 9 years, and they dissipate or disappear. And so I said, what is it that is troubling our organizations, and how can they become stronger? And that's how I come to write the Strengthening an African-Centered Organization, 11 Keys. It is a book that's not what I consider to be a workbook more than anything else. And it requires that we take those keys, and there may be others, and we say apply them to our institution and say, are we doing this? If we're not, then our work is to make sure that we are solid before we go out and try and do work for others. And so the Strengthening an African-Centered Organization, 11 Keys that you've already identified, is an effort to say, take this book, use it for development rather than just using it to recite it. Too much recitation taking place. And now, I hope nobody misunderstood me. I'm not saying you don't use recitation. I'm saying use it to strengthen rather than just to demonstrate that I have the ability to do that, or just for amusement or just for entertainment. Sometimes even in our conferences, we invite people on the basis of how entertaining they are, and we clap and it's all over. So I'm saying those are the types of things that are important to me that we address. And I think the time has come for we even have conferences and networks, groups who come together just to address issues like that so that we can become stronger. Strength is in unity. And there's no doubt in my mind, whatever it takes to bring unity with the values that we have, with the Martin values and with the principles of Martin, with the Declaration of Innocence and all those things. It's important that we use those rather than just talk about them. In fact, in many ways, those are examples of how we can apply values that would pass down to us to resolve issues. Now, you may ask, we must know the values first.
Yes, sir.
So as I wrote this Strengthening an African Center, what I attempted to do was put some of those values down and weave them in both the values that we often say, and weave them into intelligence and other things but at all times the effort was to give credit to the individual as a part of the whole.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So individual achievement then, it's fine, but it's not really, if it's not helping community, then that's not what you're talking about. It's not what you've demonstrated with all the institutions that formed you, and even in your own family. I mean, by my count, what you got 2 medical doctors as daughters, Dr. Moriba Kelsey and Dr. Romani. What's Romani's last name? Romani is I almost forgot her last name. Reed. What is Reed, right? So, and of course, your son, Madibo, who works in the medical field. These are examples of how it's not enough to talk. You've got to transmit this wisdom on. And as I think your mother told you, as you write, when you went to Tuskegee, go down there and get all the education you can, but don't come back and lose common sense. So
I might say that's one of the guiding principles of my life. I didn't know it. And the interesting thing is that I said, why did my mama say something like that at the time?
Lord. but you discovered, but as you're saying, individual achievement is fine. We have a lot of individuals who have achieved, but collective work, the common goal, how important is it in terms of thinking about healthy Black communities? How important is it for us to always understand that we are not just individuals, but we're members of community?
Well, right now I'm writing some of what I call the growing peas.
And it's Rogers. I'm sorry, I came back, man, not Reed. Dr. Moriba Kelsey Rogers. Y'all won't Romani getting me about that. Go ahead, so go ahead.
And one of the, and often we say protest and give it a great honor that you protest. Well, and I think we need to protest, but we need to protest inside our group and outside our group. We need to protest inside for the purpose of cleaning up some of the unifying principles that we have, and we need to have a plan of action that when anybody, and we'll go strong enough where anybody comes against our vision, that we protest the vision, not just an individual act. So that's in essence what this Strengthening African-Centered Organization, the 11 Keys, is about. Let's get away from just the creation of individual action as success if it is not feeding into collective success. And there's no dollar value you can put on it. And so the fact that I've achieved $1 billion or $1 million or whatever the case might be is not what is no longer, should no longer be identified as an element of success. Now, I'm not talking against having money. It is important to have money because that's what the medium of exchange is here in America.
Yes, sir.
It could be something else, but within our group, we can make it something else. We can make it be that the old trading thing that we once had, where my mama needed a cup of sugar, she sat down the block and said, Mama said, Miss Bond, lend me a cup of sugar. That lend didn't mean I was going to go back and pay you a cup of sugar. It meant that if you needed something one day, you could send for it and you get it back. And that kind of reciprocity and whatnot that we have seen, we're all, I'm not putting myself separate from the rest of it. We all have experienced that, but we've been taught against it. Yes. And so in our schools and in our churches and sometimes in our community groups, and I think that it's very important that we revisit it and strengthen ourselves so that we can truly become African-centered organizations with the values and the practices and the policies and the restraints that we want to apply to ourselves.
Yes, sir. Yes,
That's what I think would get us respect for ourselves. Well, we can't say any longer that you're not listening to me.
Yes, sir.
Well, we can't say any longer that Mr. Jones is smarter than Mr. Johnson.
Yes.
It is important that we understand that we need each other so much that we can't afford any longer to go about the business of trying to do it individually as we have been taught to do. I often say, even if we that the principle, one of the principles we are taught is, if my mama doesn't go to heaven, I'll journey on anyway. I ask myself, how in the heck can I journey on peacefully and leave my mama behind?
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Well, Baba, that's a beautiful place to think. It seems to me for us to pause, and we hope you'll come back to the Black Table, and we can integrate you into a kind of regular conversation about these issues and what you see, particularly as we enter 2023, your 98th year around the sun. And while we continue to have you here, we want you to continue to teach. And we know you're going to do that anyway. So we want to thank you for joining us here, Baba Moriba Kelsey. Love to your wife, Mama Barbara Kelsey, Niambi Kelsey, and the whole family. Hope you'll consider joining us again soon, Baba.
Well, thanks very much. I always enjoy talking to you. I learned so much.
No, listen, I'm just trying to continue in the way that you pointed us, Baba. So thank you for joining us, and we'll have another conversation soon.
All right.
Yes, sir. We'll be back in a moment to clear the table and get ready for our next conversation here on the Black Star Network. Back in a moment.
What's up, y'all? Look, Fanbase is more than a platform. It's a movement to empower creators, offering a unique opportunity for everyday people to invest in Black-owned tech, infrastructure, and help shape the future of social media. Investing in technology is essential for creating long-term wealth and influence in the digital age. The Black community must not only consume tech, we must own it.
Discover how equity crowdfunding can serve as a powerful tool for funding Black businesses, allowing entrepreneurs to raise capital directly through their community through the Jobs Act. Welcome back to the Black Table here on the Black Star Network. Remember to download the app, join the Bring the Funk fan club, support this network. You see today another reason why supporting this network is so important. We've been blessed to have a conversation with Dr. Moriba Kelsey, a powerful elder, master teacher, an influencer, institution builder. And I don't mean an influencer in the social media sense. I mean a great influence in the world, a force for good in this world. And you've seen just a glimpse of why. We want to close today with a word from his book, Strengthening African-Centered Organizations, 11 Keys. This is something he wrote about unity. Dr. Kelsey writes, every unity effort among Africans must intentionally strive for interdependent and complementary activities. Everyone is a genius, but not everyone needs to be doing the same thing at the same time. It must be understood that everyone's talents and skills are needed and expected to be utilized. The key here is to nurture, focus, and blend everyone's gifts, talents, and energies toward the common goal of African uplift, growth, and progress. That's a lesson for African people, from African people to the world, and it's grounded in the received wisdom of someone who has been a direct recipient of that wisdom from generations before him, who has spread that wisdom through the generations he has experienced and continues to experience, and is giving us a testament to the future. So we'll join with you in a week's time for the next Black Table. Everybody stay safe and healthy, support the network, and we'll see you soon.